I would like to advertise our annual conference, Symphony Live London. It will happen in September 17th to 18th. There will be trainings, there will be talks, there will be social after the event. So you are really welcome to the event. If you want to have news about the conference, there is Sensio Labs UK Twitter account and hashtag Symphony Live. So that's pretty much it. It will be the same venue for the view that attended last year. It will be the Queen Elizabeth Hall, which you really liked apparently. That's it. I would like to introduce Marek. He will talk about introducing Drupal Symphony Components in Drupal 7. And yeah, that's all for me.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about Mission Impossible, which is integrating Symphony Components with Drupal 7. Why Mission Impossible? We know Drupal 8 already uses Symphony Components, Drupal 7 doesn't, but sometimes you have worked, so let's start. I'm Marek. You can find me on Twitter and ask questions afterwards, or any questions you might have. I work for Sensio Labs. We do a Symphony Live event in London, which Kacper was talking about. So let's talk about our mission. So the project was basically started as a Magento e-commerce shop, web shop for the customer. It started a few years back, was written on the old Magento version, and over time, from the shop, it kind of like customer wanted to have some CMS features, so the best choice was to use a Magento built-in CMS features. Who knows Magento in here? Yeah, so probably you know that Magento isn't a great CMS platform. So, well, Magento is a really awesome platform, e-commerce platform. So, but it was good for the customer for the time being. So, yeah, so Magento, the problem. It was the old version. It was very tightly coupled. I mean, all enhancements done to the platform were very tightly coupled, very difficult to migrate. As I said, Magento is a great e-commerce, but it's not so great CMS, and the features were very limited. So, and the customer also like invested already so much money in Magento. So the budget for the CMS platform was really limited. So they were kind of there was a kind of limited budget, like limited resources as well. So what customer wanted came to us and said, so I want to have a proper CMS. I want to manage my corporate website. At the current one, nothing really happens because it's just a front end from Magento store. I would like to add some microsites or like other Magento or other brand websites. Customer has other brands as well, and ideally he would like to manage them through the same platform. So so from time to time he would like to add seasonal microsites, let's say for Christmas, for Easter, for St. Patrick's Day, whatever. And also he would like to integrate it with Magento store, but he wouldn't like to be Magento CMS. So there were a few things from Magento store. The new platform would need to show all products from Magento store natively. It's like without an embedding via iframe or whatever. Those products would need to be updated every day or on demand whenever it's needed. They wanted also mini basket to be integrated, so customer, when he goes from store to one of the microsites, would see the basket content included. Also, they wanted to have a depot locator. As it turns out, they had different prices based on where you based. It's a B2B platform. So that was another level of complexity. So to the rescue came Drupal. While Drupal is an awesome CMS platform, plenty of modules, easy to implement, easy to install, easy to manage, has all the features they might want out of the box built in. Right? You can, if you want to build multi-site, it's already there. You want to run blog, it's already there. Add articles, change views based on the content, it's already there. It's also relatively easy to extend by adding new modules which are not included in the core, or writing your own modules. We'll get to that a little bit later. And it's very easy to theme, to change the way it looks, the way the platform looks. So they wouldn't have to even talk to us. They could have their own team in-house to change the layout, change the way website looks by employing some Drupal experts. And they had a really limited budget. So these were reasons why we look at the Drupal. The only problem was it was Drupal 7. And say it again?
The PHP version?
No, it was because Drupal 8 was not stable yet. And
I don't think it's still.
it won't be for another year or two, probably. I think it's Alpha 3 or something like that right now. Anyway, so we have Magenta, we have Drupal. So we wanted to find a way to communicate those, to connect those two things. Some people would say the easiest way would be to use one of the Drupal modules to connect directly to Magenta. That proved to be not very effective, not very efficient. And also we wanted to have a control on how we execute tasks. Let's say if you want to run the cron job through Drupal, it needs to spin all the Drupal. The same task, if you run it from the command line, takes like a fraction of resources and it's much quicker. So we decided to use Symfony. And basically, not necessarily Symfony, but Symphony Components, which was a Symphony Components. So what is Symfony? Probably you know. It's awesome framework. It comes with a nicely bundled features like Doctrine, Twig. But Symfony is also a really nice set of nicely decoupled components. You can cherry pick and build your own basic application or your own framework as you wish. So so that's our stack. We also use Composite to install. That's the obvious choice. So let's make the impossible. So because we're using components, we wanted to have kind of like a separate stack. We couldn't really. We had to treat Drupal as not as a first citizen in our application, but as someone sitting next to us. I'll come back to that later. So first thing, to keep parties separate, we decided to use dependency injection to build nice set of services. So we use dependency injection component and Symfony config component. So how we did it was dependency injection, standardized and centralized way of constructing objects in our application. Drupal doesn't have any dependency injection. It's not really object orientated, but although they claim it is, they look at that as a class is a file, and then you have your methods hooks. They call it methods. So it's funny, but we started building our kernel. So our kernel had just one method, boot, to basically build a container and compile it. Does nothing yet. So first step would be to add a some parameters we need for configuration, like maybe database, some credentials for Magento adapter to connect to Magento. And the next step was to load service definitions. So our container could know, dependency injection container would know how to resolve services we wanted to use in our application. We also registered an extension, our application extension, which would allow us to use a compiler pass to do some magic with services, or flatten the parameters we had in a parameters.yaml, just to simplify it. We also extracted this into the method, so in the next step we could cache our container. In production it doesn't change often, so you want to have it cached. You don't want to rebuild container every time you execute your application. Bear in mind it's going to be loaded with Drupal every time. But also in a dev environment we would like to bypass the caching the container, so that came really handy. So this is basically a simple application, I would say, application kernel to resolve. You can use that as a base to do a lot, especially if you're building some kind of like a server-based or command line-based tools. You don't need anything else really. Parameters YAML, yeah, some database, some SOAP client credentials, some other information details for our product administrator. Services, looks like it. We use XML for services. Some of our developers are using PHP Storm, and it can read those XMLs and then autocomplete, suggest, or whatever it can do. So yeah, next step is to build our command console, console commands, which we use Symfony console component for. First of all, inside our application, we build something like import and persist action handler. This little class was basically taking data from some importer and was dumping it into a persister. So it takes as a dependency a product importer, which in our case was Magento product importer, and it dumps in the product persister, which basically stores the product somewhere, product information. It was required we wanted to have the product information cached somewhere. So yeah, the action is very simple. Get products, save them, that's it. Very simple. So then we wrap it in a Symfony command, configure command, and then execute. We also can output how much time it took. Very handy to test. So our app console, which we mocked from Symfony, was that simple. Auto-loaded our vendor files, created our kernel, took a Symfony console application, built it, registered some commands, and run. Simple, easy. Persisting our products. We use Symfony file system component for that. In our first iteration, we decided to dump products into the XML file. It was because we wanted to import that XML file with Drupal feeds importer. There were a couple of problems with that. I'll have a slide about that. So yeah, this implements product persister interface and takes the file system, file name, and basically that can be passed by configuration, set by configuration, and dumps file by rendering XML. Rendering XML, I think, should be a private method in that product writer, or could be extracted. Why we wanted to write XML? First problem was that fetching data from Magento was taking time, it would take up to 5-6 minutes to retrieve all the data. And so we wanted to have something which would just fetch it and dump it into the file. And then, yeah, we wanted to import it in Drupal's feed importer. It didn't work. You know why it didn't work? Feeds importer was very slow. It was taking 4.5 hours to import 10,000 products. Yeah. The other problem was that the built-in cron features in Drupal, I mean, during the course of the project, we went for the Drupal training, and we were told not to try to hack Drupal much, just try to use what Drupal provides. But the idea that we had to spin up the whole Drupal to execute the cron job, and the actual cron on the server had to execute the cron jobs via a web request, it was kind of killing me. So yeah, also because we scheduled the feed importer, it was also adding the same products all over again, even though we set all the rules that it should check if the SKU is the same, so then it should update the product rather than create a new one. It didn't. So we decided to go for an easier way. Oh, and that was resource hungry. We had to extend RAM on the server up to 1 gigabyte to make it work. So we decided to write directly to the database. So as we had already the interface for the product persister, we created a database product persister, which would take repository and just save it to the repository. And that was basically doctrine, right? So why direct save to the database? So Drupal had made a promise long time ago. They won't change the data structure. Everything is a node in Drupal, and everything should basically, the data structure should be exactly the same, whether it's version 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. So yeah, so we can write safely to the database, right? It was really fast. 40K products, it took less than 2 minutes. Compared to 10K products in 4.5 hours, that's what we needed. It worked. Yeah, so we were happy. So we stick with that. So this is our composer JSON, and we used, for those features which I described here, we only required 5 components. We used also Doctrine, Dable, application layer, DB application layer, and we also included drush command from the command installed by Composer. So that was handy. Drush, for those who don't know, is like a command line Drupal to execute Drupal commands. So we built some file called container.php, which would spin up our container inside Drupal. So it would basically use autoloader, create a new kernel, boot it, and set the global variable di container from the kernel. In Drupal, everything is set to the Drupal global variable, which is passed around hooks and everything. So that's why it's resource hungry, I think. Drupal database configuration, instead of writing parameters in configuration, username and passwords in here, we take them from container, which is useful. We have configuration in one place. The other reason is that we use Symfony to install for the deployment. So it was very handy that configuration was kept in one place the way we already use it. So we didn't have to make any changes for Drupal. In our settings PHP, which is like a master Drupal index main file, we had to include container before database, and that's it really. And from that point, Drupal was using our decoupled source code and also components or whatever we wanted from. So we had another feature, depend locator, which was used from Drupal. So this is a Drupal module where we have where we had a hook, which for given postcode would return a depot. So that was a simple code. So if you want to write modules which for Drupal which are decoupled from Drupal, I think that's the best way to do it. So you can basically register them as services inside dependency injection container, and just get a service and execute the action you want. Right. So project folder structure. So that's what I said before. We had a everything. This is our root folder of the project. So Drupal was hidden here in a public folder. We kept some Behat features for some smoke tests. You don't really want to test Drupal with Behat. No. We had some PHP spec. Everything was spec'd with PHP spec. I mean the code we've written. So our application was basically configuration in here, and the source code was the code we've written. Yeah. So let's recap. Drupal is great. Don't get me wrong. It's really great. If you just need a simple CMS, not so simple. Simple would be WordPress. But if you need a CMS for a website, you don't really want to mess with it, then Drupal is your choice. I know it's bad. I know developers hate that because it's an outdated code. It's not the greatest code as well to look or do anything with it, but it works. And even US president is using it for his own website. So yeah, some Drupal developers say that it can do everything, even e-commerce. Yes, some websites, simple websites with simple product structure may work well, but I wouldn't use Drupal for e-commerce. But as a CMS, perfect. If my mother asked me for a website for herself, I would use Drupal for her. Less hassle for me, and it would be easier for her to find someone to give her help. Symfony Components, great to cherry pick what you want when you build your application. So you can basically build your own framework as you need. Yeah. Decoupled code. I really like the code which is away from application. So that was another reason why I didn't want to push my code and my modules too much inside the Drupal code base. I wanted to keep everything away from it. Right tool, yeah, that's what I said before. Use the right tool for a job. If you want to have a simple CMS, then Drupal is your choice. Simple blog, probably that would be WordPress. You always have to remember to update those features, those products. If you have a complex product, complex domain, then it might be useful to then write your application, decouple from any framework, and maybe use Symfony or Zen framework if you want. And that's it, really. Any questions?
So from your presentation, it looks like you basically build a Symfony console application.
Yeah, sort of.
As a microservice along Magenta and Drupal.
Well,
is this right, or did I get the wrong impression?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, cool.
More or less correct.
So the way, but is the Drupal code in any way using the Symfony component?
It is.
Because I understand that your Symfony application writes to the database, which it might as well write somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it makes perfect sense to write the database, but then the only integration that it seems to have with Drupal is through the database, unless I'm reading it wrong.
This is a Drupal module which uses.
Okay, so you are feeding the container. You are basically feeding the container into your Drupal application. Then you can use the services in other Drupal modules.
Yeah.
For example? Okay, cool.
Or I can write my own module, which is basically like just a glue.
Yeah.
It's like when you build a decoupled application from Symfony, you use your controllers, for example, just to get an action and from your code base. So this way, the whole logic how to find the depot how to connect to Magento. That was a live connection to Magento.
So that sits in Drupal, in a Drupal module?
No, that sits in a Symfony. It's in a source folder, like decoupled from the Drupal completely.
Okay. How is Drupal using?
Well, we built like a module where you have to enter postcode, right? And this would fire a question to this. It's like through the post would ask the question. I have a postcode. Give me a depot.
So
for the
it will just use the dependency injection container.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's the. I think that's the easiest and the quickest way to you expose some services and you know which service you want and it's just connecting. More questions?
Why did you use XML for the services and YAML for the parameters? Wouldn't it be better to have it consistent?
Well, parameters are easier to edit as a YAML file. XML only because it integrates well with IDEs like PHP Storm. So
there is a limitation with YAML configuration as well. It can inject certain types of parameters like PHP constants and so on.
Yeah, and the true for or the null, it has a problem.
Yeah. So we tend to use the XML configuration
for services.
for services.
Yeah.
So to be honest, I agree with the approach because it's more, as he said, the parameters you will change them more often. The definition of the services probably.
Yeah, but the services usually are more complex than your parameters of YAML.
What integration do you get with PHP Storm?
I'm not using PHP Storm. This is a PHP Storm.
Well, there is a Symfony plugin which reads the compiled version of the container and auto-completes all the services. So when you type in the PHP code or in the XML file, it will help you. You don't have to write everything. Basically, saves loads of time and saves loads of time on refreshing the website because you just misspelled something. So I really recommend that plugin.
I'm not using PHP Storm, so.
You described this example for
Sorry, I can't hear you.
to connect Magento with Drupal, but we can use Symfony and Drupal to connect any model.
Yeah, my basically that. This presentation is based on the project we've done at my company, and in our case, that was connecting Magento and Drupal and feeding Symfony components in between. Of course, you can connect with anything, and if you try to write decoupled code, like in our case, we can move the code we've written and take it to, let's say, Zentro application and use it there as well.
So the only thing to do is to write the container for dependency injection, and we can use it for any.
Well, dependency injection allows you to like have a standardized way of creating objects inside your application, right? So let's say our code base. I don't have any examples in here, but in a code base, you write the business logic, and some endpoints like actions you expose as services, and you define them as services, and then you can easily use them through container. Because some services probably would be private, which are not exposed, and yeah. At the back.
How easy, unfortunately I work at a company what's using Drupal 6. How easy would it be to do the same with Drupal 6?
To be honest, this is my first application I've done with Drupal, and that was Drupal 7, but I think that should be reasonably easy to do exactly the same, because what you really need to do is you need to include your container, and that's it, and assign to global state. And if you didn't want to share configuration, then yeah. So if you didn't want to share your configuration, you could basically assign to the Drupal variables, but through the global status as well is alright. But it should be. But basically, you should just include your container, which is where you spin up your application, and then you should be able to use it. So, in my opinion, this approach, I mean, should work for Drupal 6 easily.
Well, we've done similar thing for other clients as well, and we had like really legacy application, and we've done the same thing. And because client came and said, okay, we know it's, and we don't want to like work and live with this anymore. But our approach was not we're going to rewrite everything. We started introducing new features by exposing such container and writing like things in the right way somewhere on the side of this legacy system, and then just incorporating these features in the application. So it should be possible basically in any PHP 5.3 application.
Yeah, as long as you can use namespaces, you should be fine.
And to save into the database, you use doctrine ORM or?
Just the database abstraction layer, DBL, not the full doctrine. Just not to waste time on, spinning up all the database. That's you?
Since I raised the hand earlier, just to be clear, what you did for this project was just...
That's the first phase of the project.
Okay.
Because there's many more phases coming in, more integrations, and there's
But so far you are basically using your console application as a data source to Drupal. Even the example that you showed with it basically returns a JSON there, right? Right, so get depot JSON.
This one, yeah. It has a method to array. So it exposes back JSON because the front end was like making it look nice.
Right, but you can technically call a method on a service, whatever the method service does, right?
Yeah.
From within Drupal or from within any other application.
Yeah, but you have two uses of this thing. You can in this case we inject application into Drupal, so it doesn't use it doesn't use the console thing, but in here where is the so this is the console, right? So we actually spin up the console application.
Yeah, but in here you don't have anything to do with Drupal.
Yeah, but it's just like we have product imports, delete products, and depot locate. This one was used for testing, basically, that it works. Yeah, but this yeah, you could actually use the same commands if you wanted.
Actually, my whole question is about if I've got let's say a legacy application, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I'm using my own request objects if I'm actually using any stuff. How hard would it be to actually swap that whole? And obviously it's quite coupled with the entire application to the framework that was used for. So I know I can inject through that your HTTP component. I know I can inject the response class as well, but can I actually use them? I think how hard would it be to actually get rid of all the other legacy in the application tool?
Well, it depends what you want to replace. What we're doing here, we're adding like extra functionality to the platform, right? We're not trying to replace how Drupal works. Yeah. So if you have your, let's say you have your legacy application, which let's say it's a website. So probably you have some controllers which display something, get the request, your legacy request. So then you would probably need to do some data transformation to either like create a new request from like a Symfony request, and then dump it to your Symfony stack, or you could just create your models from your domain, new application, and dump it to your new stack.
There's also a really good book, Working Effectively with Legacy Applications, which gives you loads of ways how to like work with legacy code, how to refactor it out, how to split these 8,000 lines, methods, and so on into smaller ones. And so if you have to work with legacy, I recommend this one.
More questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. My slides will be on speaker deck. If you have any questions, grab me now, later, or catch me on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.